Good day all and welcome to the South African lawn. Janie lekker. So this video brings us to our fourth and final step of this construction or building of this backyard putting green. And I hope you enjoyed the process this far. So yeah, this brings us to the last video, which is obviously seeding. Well, definitely not the last video on this green. Obviously there'll be tons of updates, but the actual construction and building of this green will end right here. The rest will all be updates and hopefully playing eventually on this thing. So yeah, thank you so much for watching these videos. I hope you've enjoyed them. And if you have, be sure to like these videos and also, more importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let's get into today's video. Okay, so before we get to the actual preparation of the seeding and the actual seeding, I just want to talk to you about one or two of the problems that I've picked up or what I would have done differently had I have unlimited resources. In all fairness, I would have probably gone with about a 300 ml deep sand layer with obviously perforated pipe at the bottom, draining away water as quick as possible so that I don't sit with drainage issues. Because the other night I actually used, the last 4 or 5 nights to be honest with you, a lot of water to smooth out this surface, and I had some puddling over there. So a good point is, or a good plus is, actually after applying this Oro soil, that issue quickly disappeared. I think the actual soil below the sand here has held on to it or didn't allow for water to drain as fast. So now when I use water, that drains just so much quicker. So might have been a little bit hydrophobic soil. So ideally you would want to have a thickish soil or sand layer where the water can fall through quickly, and then obviously get that water out of the way as quick as possible, because Bent doesn't like wet feet. Second issue that I've encountered, and that's why you see the frost nets there, not really for frost at this stage, is my little dogs. Well, the little dog and the big dog. As you can see right there, they absolutely love sand. So for the last 5 or 6 mornings, I've been out here and repairing holes that they've dug here. So after I've seeded now, I'm going to build a temporary wall for at least until the actual grass comes up, because they are mega destructive. As you can see, there's paw marks here. Because I've been using so much water, it really gets like kind of soggy-ish. Because of all that water, I literally flush this whole thing to get it as flat as possible. Water is such a great way, by the way, to get sand level. That's why I've used it for the last 5 or 6 days, to try and level out the screen so well, and it did wonders really, until the dogs obviously messed it up. So as you can see, paw marks all over here. Right there, and wherever. But I have raked them back in now, and all in all, this green is pretty flat. Let me show you that. So eventually I decided to, a couple of minutes ago actually, to dig this sprinklers up and add a little 50 ml PVC pipe around the sprinklers to keep the sand from clogging around that actual stem. So what happens is this, as it gets wet, the soil actually clogs around the stem and it doesn't go back in properly when I irrigate, and that creates some issues. Firstly, the obviously stem stays up, and secondly, it creates gaps between the actual stem and the actual body of the sprinkler, so the water leaks out a little bit. So I just tested this now. As you can see, it's still wet in there, and this works a lot better. So I put those pipes in, and I'll probably even them out after the green has started growing, just get them flat or level with the surface, but for now I leave them exposed a little bit so that the sand doesn't fall back in there. Okay, so I've brought you down here at the wall level to show you this actual flatness of this putting green right now. I'm super chuffed with how it's looking right now. Hopefully I can keep the dogs out until this is germinated. Once there's grass, they'll treat it as the rest of the lawn. Well, that's what I hope. I've been wrong in the past, but just look at absolutely how it's not like perfect, but it is pretty damn close. Just have a look there. Absolutely, that's what I mean. I leave them exposed so the sand doesn't wash back into actual sprinklered. So yeah, it looks awesome. I think it is dead set ready for seeding right now. Okay, so who out there is planning to do a seeding project? Put your hand up, don't be shy. Put your hand up, even there on the couch while your wife is watching. Put your hand up. Yep, you, this video is for you. There's a lot of you out there. And how do I know there's a lot of people out there? Because a lot of people in the last 6 months has contacted me. Mary, what should I do with my seeding project? Well, it's typed, so I can't really, I'm just making this voice up. What should I do? I'm looking to seed. Okay, so guys, this video is for you. I'm going to talk about the seeding fundamentals right now. And if you follow what I'm saying right now, you should have pretty good success. Just like I've had pretty good success over the last 2 years with this lawn. So yeah, all right, let's talk not too much nonsense now. Firstly, preparation of your seed bed. And I really have done as much as I could with my budget and the time and the limitations that I've had. As much as possible I've done right here to get it as perfect as possible. So let's quickly just name the fundamentals. Firstly, the two fundamentals are water and heat, moisture and heat. Those are the two fundamentals for grass seed to germinate. And then the third fundamental is you will need seed to soil contact for the actual roots to shoot into the soil. So those are the three fundamentals: water, heat, and seed to soil contact. Okay, so in my scenario here, I've got sand. Whatever you've got, I don't care. You want to grab yourself a spade like this. You could also use a steel rake like this. Also, I've used it in the past, works very well. But today I'm going to use the trusty old recycled plastic, maybe virgin plastic, I don't know. But I'm going to use this one today. Okay, so depending on the method that you follow, you will either need your rake now or later. So the two methods that I want to quickly talk about is you could either rake now and fluff up your soil just a little bit, just the top 2 or 3 mils, because obviously you don't want your seed to fall down 10 mils below the soil. It will germinate down there and it won't have enough power to actually shoot through the soil or your sand and come and grow on top. So the two methods are, you can either leave it right as it is, seed then rake lightly and then roll it in, or you could rake it up front, get it fluffy, seed and roll it in afterwards. Rolling is actually not even, you could actually just water it in, whatever. But your two methods is you could obviously rake either beforehand or afterwards, after you've seeded now, or you can do both. You can obviously rake, then seed, and then rake lightly again. But be careful, that's why I'm going to use the plastic rake today, because that'll ensure my tines of this rake not to dig in 10 mils below the soil. I really just want to ruffle up the top 1 or 2 mils to give my seed the best chance to push through that areas, or especially all the ones that's down there. So your seed will actually be fine even if it's just left on top. It's easier to keep it moist when it's covered with a millimeter or millimeter and a half or 2 mils of soil or sand. So I've decided I'm going to rake my sand just a little bit, just because I've raked a lot of this area to try and rake out the paw prints of my dogs. But I'm just lightly going to rake and create small grooves and fluffy sand for me to seed in. Where's Jomo? Ivy, Jomo? Yeah, so that looks pretty damn good, in my opinion. I'm literally creating tiny grooves for the seed to fall into, but nothing major, nothing serious. I think this is dead set ready for the actual seed to come down. And then after that, we'll obviously rake it again and then either roll it or water it in. Right, ladies and gentlemen, now I'm going to reveal to you the seed that I will be using. Okay, so right here we have got the seed that I'm going to use, and this is the Barenbrug, obviously creeping bent, Barenbrug actually. We are Afrikaans, and I think this is probably a Dutch or whatever company. Bent grass coated A4 is the variety. The actual kind of the grass type is the creeping bent A4. Okay, so if you are interested in the different bent grass seed varieties. I'll send you the list of all the different ones. But from what I've heard, I've spoken to Sharon at Grasses and Greens and one or two of the greenkeepers. The differences between the bent grass varieties is so small. The actual drought tolerance, the actual disease resistance, the different diseases resistance to them, all those type of things. So the differences are really so small. The biggest difference comes in between the actual speed of the growth. So your aggressiveness of the growth of your actual bent grass. This is the most aggressive one. Most of the ones that they use on golf courses are the most aggressive ones. That'll be your A1, A4, the T1. I'll show you the whole list. So they normally use the most aggressive ones, and that basically means not necessarily mowing more, but scarifying, vertidraining, removal of thatch, those type of things. Got to keep that a little bit finer under control. Yeah, like, and I would like to introduce to you this little hand spreader right here. So a couple of days or weeks or months ago, I walked in Checkers Hyper and I saw this oakie for 129 Rand 99. And I thought, yeah, see, what a bargain. And then when I came home, I realized it's really kind of plasticky and whatever, but never mind that. I will do a review on this later, but I'm going to use this for seeding today. That's how it looks on the inside. Hopefully it doesn't turn out to be a complete disaster, but it feels very flimsy. It might break even today. So yeah, if it works, if it holds up, then it's probably the biggest bargain of the year. Okay, lekker. So I'm going to open this bag of seed now. And I just quickly want to talk to you regarding determining your seeding rate, okay, or the amount of seed that you need to put down. So how you determine this is taking the recommended seeding rate on the actual packet and then determining how big your area is and multiply that with either squares or divided, whatever. So how this works is I've got roughly 17 square meters here, and this bag covers 100 square meters. So it's 10 grams per square, or 100 grams per 10 squares, or 1,000 grams per 100 squares. And I've only got roughly, I'm going to call it 20. So I really only need 200 grams of this kilogram bag of seed on this area. So essentially I can seed this green 5 times or 5 times the size of this green with this 1 kilogram bag. And I think that has got all to do with the actual size of the seed that makes it such a low seeding rate. I don't know if that'll actually show up in this camera, but it is super, super tiny. Let me try and get it in my hand. This is like, really, it is like fine. Okay, so the normal seeds, and I'm talking about normal seeds, but what you would normally use on a lawn, Kentucky bluegrass, ryegrass or whatever, that's normally closer to 25 grams per square meter. So this is quite a lot less, I think, because of the actual seed size. So I've got my old trusty kitchen scale here. So let's measure out 200 grams and put it down. I'm going to set it to 0 with the spreader on, and then I'm just carefully going to add 20 grams. Oh, I would actually like to see whether this whole bag is a kilo. 980. I've been cheated here with 20 grams of seed. Okay, now we're getting closer. 170, 180, 190, 195. And there I've got 205 grams of seed, which I think would be more than enough for a start on this golf green, and it's about that much. It is so little. Goodness gracious, I can't see how all this little bit of seed is going to cover all of that area. It's getting a little bit dark. I think I'm going to put my lights and show my lights off here. Put on my lights. Ha! They're beautiful. Okay, so basically all there is to the distribution of the seed is to put it down over the entire area as even as possible. And one thing to keep in mind is to not get it on the areas where you do not want grass seed to grow, like your garden beds. Be especially careful on the edges. If you don't want grass seed to grow in your beds, then don't. Make sure there's no grass seed that falls in that bed. Okay, so I don't know the settings on this thing. It's got a 1, 2 and a 3. I'm going to put it like on a half because this is really, really tiny. And then I'm literally, that might even be too much. Let's see if anything comes out. Oh yes, I think that's too big. It's like on 0.25. I'm going to put it back to 0.15 and then put the seed down. No, nothing's coming out. I should have probably done this in broad daylight because I cannot see whether any seed is coming out. Okay, so I've done the whole perimeter. Now I'm going to walk a couple of lines over and over again, spinning this thing quite fast because the seeds are really so tiny I can't see them coming out. So I'm just going to adapt this method of walking in straight lines over and over again until the seed is finished. Alright, so I've got a couple of handfuls of seed left and it's gotten really dark really quickly now, thankfully for these lights. Sorry, I work during the day, that's why I do this mostly late afternoons, early mornings. But I've got a couple of handfuls left. But you could obviously seed this by hand. I've done this plenty times and it works really well. You've just got to not overshoot in the beginning and see if you can get it down as even as possible. Okay, maybe a little bit heavy with it. Closer to the end of this, 205 or 4 grams of seed right here. And I can see 1 or 2 areas that's maybe seeded a little bit heavy. But I've now covered this with my hand as well in 2 directions. So I think we should have pretty good coverage. This is the last of that seed. Yeah, so I'm not going to seed anymore. You can see a couple of heavy areas right there until I've actually got some germination results. If after a week or 2 I see that there's no germination in some areas, then I'll go and seed those areas again. Really do it the recommended rate the first time and then overseed the areas that you struggle with. There'll probably be a couple of areas where they wash away and all those type of things. But look at this. This is a little bit heavy. You can see clearly just based on looking at the results in the other areas that this is probably seeded. There's a couple of yellow areas there, where you can actually see the seed. The rest is, it is such a tiny seed that you probably won't see much of it even during the day. Okay, so all there's left to do really for me now is to give it a very, very light raking. Remember, you don't want to move the seed around the whole area again now and leave bare spots or bare with no seed. And then you could roll it in. I'm literally just going to water it in for 2 or 3 minutes with this irrigation system of mine. Okay, I want to try and keep off this area as much as possible now. But I want to talk to you just quickly about 1 or 2 of the things taking into consideration about when to seed. Okay, so first thing is obviously the time when should I seed. I personally feel for cool season grasses, Kentucky bluegrass, ryegrass, even this creeping bent, probably March, April and then May, which I mean now it's probably too late. I would have liked to get this down 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, even 5 or 6 weeks. The earlier you go, especially in Joburg, obviously the higher chance of getting seed wash away, because we still have chances of rain. So I think that's one of the biggest threats. Now talking about the threats, seed wash away is probably going to be your biggest, especially in the Joburg thunder showers. Having a thunder shower of 30 mils in 30 minutes is really going to wash away some seeds. Go and have a look at some of my older videos. You'll really see a lot of seed wash away in one of the videos that I did there. And then another thing is frost. I don't particularly get a lot of frost here, especially because I've got trees covering this area, and this backyard of mine doesn't really get a lot of frost because it's sheltered by quite a lot of trees. But frost, young grasses do not really like frost. So that's one thing to keep in mind that might push you going a little bit earlier and rather overseeding if it doesn't germinate. I'm doing it now. I honestly think it's 2, 3, 4 weeks too late. But I am getting it down now. If I don't have great results and we have cold weather coming in, then I'll probably do an overseed again in spring, or if there's a good window for seeding, good weather. So yeah, those are the things to look out for. I think other than that, obviously the difference between cool season and warm season. If you're doing warm season, obviously spring to December, I would say September, October, November, probably going to be your best window if you're not sodding. You don't see a lot of warm season seeds around. Normally you get sod. So obviously that's going to be your best window. So basically what you want to do is you want to time it going into a strong period. You want your strong period still ahead of you when doing seeding or sodding. So if it's warm season, in the beginning of your warm season. If it's cool season, beginning of your cool season, or before winter. And in Joburg, doesn't really get that cold. You must remember we're using North American grass types here, like Kentucky bluegrass or ryegrass or whatever the case may be. So it's very, very cold there. So our winter is not really like gonna nail this Kentucky bluegrass lawn of mine. That's why seeding early in May is probably a good time. Okay, so now my final step before I water it in, I'm going to give it a very, very gentle rake. I actually don't even want to walk on this area anymore. But I'm going to give it a very, very gentle rake right now. You could just roll it in, obviously. I personally think in the previous times I've had a lot of birds on the yard, but I never really saw areas that's too badly affected by the actual birds eating the seeds. And I think this is like, there's a million of seeds, more than a million seeds right here. So I don't think it's going to be a big issue right here. I don't think they ever eat too much where it gets to a stage where they've eaten a whole area of seed. And yeah, hopefully you're working with a self-repairing grass type like this creeping bend, so it can actually repair the bare areas. Quite interestingly, you can see my sand is fairly firm, and I've actually scraped all the seed off those areas. But as I'm watering them back in, those fluffed sand right there, the fluffed sand with the small seeds, will now mingle beautifully and create awesome seed to soil contact. So that's really what I'm after. That's the only reason, that's the only benefit for me personally of raking afterwards. It's just fluffing them together so that when they settle, they actually create a very, very good seed to soil contact. Just have a look there, guys. I've actually raked out all the seed out of those grooves, but they'll settle back in together now, and then the grass will fill in. So I'm not too worried about that. That actually looks beautiful to me, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe you've got a different method, but this looks absolutely awesome to me. Beautifully, the seed sits in the fluffed soil, in the fluffed sand there. Like Owen, so I've basically done what I could. Now it's literally keeping up with the watering. I'm going to water, I think now it's getting a little bit cooler, probably about 3 times a day. Like I said, I've completely overshot with the sprinklers here, just keeping them moist. So probably 3 times a day for 1 or 2 minutes. I'm going to see what the watering does, but I don't want running whatsoever. Obviously, then I'm basically imitating thunder shower. So I literally just want to keep it moist. If it's not enough, then I'll go up to 4 times a day. If it's too much, then I'll go down to 1 or 2 times per day, probably at least 2 times a day to keep it moist, morning and evening. And then once, the plan is now for roughly 12 o'clock during the day. But I've seen now through the last 5-6 days, I did add a lot of water, but it doesn't really even completely dry out within a day. Sorry, I don't want to walk over here. So yeah, I think 2 to 3 waterings per day should be perfect, and those are going to be very, very short just because I've overshot with the sprinklers. But guys, that's all there is to do. And then after that, I'm going to add my frost netting to the edges of this to obviously keep the dogs out. Let's put the sprinklers on and see what it does. Ooh, everything's getting wet. As you can see there, I'm just putting it on for 1 minute so that I don't have any pooling or paddling or excessive what. Done. Right, so guys, so that's basically it for this video. Like I said, now all there is to it is keeping up with the irrigation right here and keeping this seed moist to ensure that it actually germinates. Hopefully the weather plays its part. Like I said, I'm a little bit too late. I would have liked to do this 3-4 weeks ago. But you know, it is what it is. I don't have all the time and all the money in the world to do everything that I wanted to. The only thing really that I can think of that I would have done a little bit differently is if I had unlimited time and resources, I would have maybe gone with a proper depth green filled with just sand and drainage. That's actually where that drain comes from. Before I did the leveling here and everything, I actually planned to do like a thickish green or 300 ml deep green with perforated pipe and all that, but the money didn't turn out like that. I think this will be fine. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this project. I really appreciate everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed the videos before this. If you haven't watched them, please go and watch them. Building this backyard putting green has been such a dream and a joy, and hopefully there's still plenty good memories to come. So if you've liked this video, please consider liking it and sharing it. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel by any chance, like I've said earlier, maybe consider subscribing. There'll be tons of updates to follow on this putting green with the after results. So just be patient. I'll show you all the flaws, all the mistakes that I've made. I'll share all that. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Bye-bye. I'll have to get someone to come and help in the evenings as well. Man kan mos nie so sukkel nie. Yes. Asai. Kyk, hoe gaan ek nou my kamera kry? Ek trek klote.